You already own the money. You just haven't claimed the account. Kenyon Decoded. E.W. Kenyon spent his life teaching that most believers are spiritually broke while sitting on a fortune they never learned how to withdraw. So today, we decode exactly what he meant by that and how it applies to you right now. The Bible says it plainly in 1 John 4:17, "As he is, so are we in this world." And Kenyon built much of his teaching on that single line, because he saw that the account was never the problem. The ignorance of the account was the problem. You were never poor in the eyes of heaven. You were only unaware of what your name was already attached to. And that gap between what is legally yours and what you actually live in, that gap is where most of us spend our whole lives, wondering why the promises feel like someone else's mail. So here is a fresh way to say it for yourself. I know what belongs to me. I speak what belongs to me. I take what belongs to me. I am claiming my account now. Say it with me. I know what belongs to me. I speak what belongs to me. I take what belongs to me. I take what belongs to me. I am claiming my account now. And one more time, from your gut this time, I am claiming my account now. Kenyon would tell you that the word only works for those who act on it. So if this teaching is opening your eyes today, subscribe now, so tomorrow's teaching finds you the moment it's ready, the way a letter finds an address. If that stirred something true in you, type the words "I'm ready" in the comments before you go any further, because saying it out loud to yourself is where every claim begins. The first key is this: the account was opened before you ever knew it existed. Kenyon taught that redemption was a finished legal transaction, settled at the cross, sealed the moment Jesus said it is finished. And that phrase in the Greek carries the weight of a paid receipt, a completed contract, not a hope, not a maybe, a done deal recorded in the courts of heaven. Picture a young man who never knew his grandfather, never met him, never even heard his name spoken at the dinner table, and one day a lawyer calls and says a trust was opened for him decades ago, funded quietly, waiting, untouched. He didn't do anything to deserve it. He wasn't even born yet when the paperwork was signed. That is exactly the picture Kenyon painted of the cross. So when you were still lost, still fumbling in the dark, not even aware there was a God who cared about your rent, or your health, or your peace of mind, the deposit was already made. The account already existed with your name on the paperwork. Kenyon called this your legal rights, the things that are yours by virtue of what Christ accomplished, not by your good behavior, not by how long you've prayed, not by how deserving you feel on any given Tuesday. This is why so many people live defeated even after they come to faith, because they think the account gets funded later, based on performance, when Kenyon insisted it was funded already, in full, the moment the transaction closed at Calvary. So the fear, the shame, the sense of starting from zero, none of that was ever accurate. It was always a done deal, wearing the costume of an unfinished one. So speak this decree with me: the account is already funded in my name. Again, the account is already funded in my name. The second key is this: there is a difference between owning something legally and possessing it vitally, and Kenyon made this distinction the very center of his whole teaching. He said believers often have perfect legal standing and zero vital reality, meaning heaven's books say the money is theirs, but their daily life still runs on empty. Think of it like an inheritance sitting in a bank 3 towns over. Your grandfather left it to you. The papers are signed. The lawyer has confirmed it. The will was read out loud in front of witnesses, but you're still working 3 jobs and skipping meals because you never drove over and picked up the check. Legally, it's yours the instant the will was read. Vitally, it does nothing for you until you walk in and claim it. Picture this same gap playing out in an ordinary kitchen. A woman gets a letter saying a small trust has been settled in her name. She reads it. She even feels a flicker of joy. Then she folds the letter into a drawer and goes back to counting coins for groceries. Weeks pass. The letter sits there, perfectly legal, perfectly true, and perfectly useless, because a legal fact left in a drawer does nothing for an empty refrigerator. Kenyon watched believers do this, with healing, with peace, with provision. They'd hear the truth, feel the flicker, fold it away, and go back to living like paupers who happen to hold a very expensive piece of paper. He taught that healing, provision, peace, authority over fear, all of these are legally yours the moment you're joined to Christ, but they only become vital, only become real in your kitchen and your body and your bank account when you personally lay hold of them. This is not about earning, it's about appropriating. There's a difference. You don't earn a check that's already written with your name on it. You simply go get it. Imagine two neighbors with identical family fortunes. One drives to the bank every week and lives accordingly. The other never goes, keeps borrowing from friends, keeps apologizing for being broke. Both are equally rich on paper. Only one is rich in daily life. That's the whole tragedy Kenyon was naming. So many people pray for something God already gave them. They beg for a check that's sitting signed in the drawer, and Kenyon would say, "Stop praying for it and start taking it," the way you'd walk into a bank with a check already signed, rather than begging the teller for a loan. So speak this decree with me: what is legally mine, I now make vital in my life. Again, what is legally mine, I now make vital in my life. The third key is this: your words are the withdrawal slip. Kenyon taught extensively on what he called the authority of the believer's confession. He said that faith's confessions are the master keys that unlock what is legally ours, meaning the account can sit there forever untouched if you never fill out the paperwork. And the paperwork, in Kenyon's teaching, is what you say, not once as a magic trick, but consistently as the natural overflow of what you now know is true. Think about how a bank actually works. You don't get money by staring at your balance silently hoping it changes. You fill out a slip, you state the amount, you sign your name, and the teller responds to what's written, not to what you're merely thinking. Kenyon saw the tongue this same way. He taught that most Christians confess their symptoms, their bank statements, their fears, their circumstances, more loudly and more often than they confess the word, and so the account stays frozen, not because God changed his mind, but because the withdrawal was never processed. Picture a man named Harold who inherited a modest fortune from an uncle he barely knew. The papers were filed. The lawyer confirmed everything. Yet every single day Harold stood in line at the grocery store and told the cashier, "Money is just tight right now." He said it to his neighbor, he said it to his wife, he said it to himself in the mirror while shaving, and slowly that sentence became the only withdrawal slip he ever filled out. So the teller, so to speak, kept honoring the only paperwork on file. The paperwork of lack, not because the inheritance vanished, but because Harold never once presented a slip that matched what was actually true. Kenyon would say Harold had a funded account and a bankrupt mouth, and a bankrupt mouth will always outvote a funded account in daily experience. He used to point out how casually people say, "I'm always sick, I never have enough, nothing works out for me," and then wonder why nothing works out for them, because every one of those sentences is a withdrawal slip too, just written against the wrong account, filed correctly, processed promptly, honored completely, only against the wrong ledger. So if you want to know why your life doesn't match your legal standing, listen to your own mouth for one full day. Count how many times you confess the bill instead of the promise. Count how many times you confess the diagnosis instead of the deed. Kenyon believed the words that come out of you are either agreeing with the courtroom verdict of heaven or agreeing with the evidence of your senses, and you cannot draw from an account you keep denying you have. This is not about pretending the bill isn't on the table. It's about which paperwork you keep submitting while it sits there. So today, practice saying what is already true rather than what merely feels true, not as denial of your circumstance, but as a higher testimony above it. Say, I am provided for. Even while the bill sits on the table, say, I am well, even while your body argues otherwise, not because you're pretending, but because you are agreeing with the deed rather than the headline. Imagine Harold finally learning this. Imagine him standing in that same grocery line saying instead, I come from abundance. I always have enough. Watch how the tone of a whole life shifts once the mouth starts filing the right claim. So speak this decree with me. My words are the withdrawal slip, and I sign them in faith. Again, my words are the withdrawal slip, and I sign them in faith. The fourth key is this. The account is joint, because you are identified with the one who owns the bank. Kenyon's teaching on identification is maybe the least understood part of his whole body of work, but it might be the most important. He taught that the believer is not simply forgiven, not simply patched up, but actually joined to Christ in such a way that what belongs to him legally belongs to the one identified with him. That's the weight behind as he is, so are we. In this world, it isn't poetic decoration. Kenyon read it as a legal and spiritual fact, not a sentiment for a greeting card, a fact recorded the way a marriage certificate is recorded, or the way a birth certificate ties a child to a family name forever. So think of a small family business where the founder adds his child's name to every account, every deed, every signature line, not because the child worked a single day in that business, not because the child proved anything, but purely because of the relationship itself. The child's name is now legally bound to the father's resources simply by belonging to the family. That is how Kenyon described your standing before God. You are not approaching heaven's resources like a stranger applying for a loan, filling out forms, hoping your credit history is good enough. You are approaching them like a child whose name was written into the family ledger the moment you were joined to Christ. Picture a young man named Daniel, whose father owned a modest hardware store his whole life. Daniel grew up watching his father struggle, counting coins at the register, worrying over the rent, and even after his father passed the store to him fully, signed, sealed, notarized, Daniel kept living like an employee. He still asked permission before ordering new stock. He still hesitated to take a day off. He still felt like he might get in trouble if he spent store money on himself, because in his mind he was still the boy watching his father struggle, not the man who now owned everything outright. It took him years to realize the papers had already made the store entirely his. The struggle he kept living in was a habit, not a legal reality. And Kenyon would say, this is exactly the tragedy he saw in believer after believer. People who own the account acting like they're still applying for it. This is why Kenyon rejected what he called sense-knowledge religion, the kind that keeps people begging God the way a stranger begs a bank manager for a loan they're not sure they qualify for. Instead, he taught believers to approach with what he called the boldness of ownership, not arrogance, not demanding, but the calm confidence of someone who already knows their name is on the account. Picture the difference between someone sneaking into a house afraid they'll be caught, checking over their shoulder, careful not to touch anything, and the actual homeowner walking in the front door with their own key, settling into the chair, opening the fridge without asking. Both might end up in the same living room, but only one of them can actually rest there. Only one of them can enjoy the house instead of merely surviving inside it. Kenyon said too many believers are living like intruders in their own inheritance, tiptoeing around blessings that were legally assigned to them the moment they were identified with Christ. whispering their requests like someone worried they'll be thrown out for asking too much. And once you understand you were made a joint owner, not a guest, not a beggar, not a probationary member on good behavior who has to prove themselves every single day, the whole tone of your prayer life changes. You stop pleading and start walking in like you belong there, because you do. This identification also means the resources were never meant to be used alone. A joint account isn't something you draw from in isolation while pretending the other name on it doesn't exist. Kenyon taught that the very reason you can approach with confidence is that you're not approaching on your own merit at all. You're approaching on the strength of the name attached right alongside yours. So when fear whispers that you don't deserve provision, or healing, or peace, the answer was never to argue about your worthiness. The answer is to remember whose name is joined to yours on that ledger. So speak this decree with me. I am identified with the owner, and the account is mine by that union. Again, I am identified with the owner, and the account is mine by that union. The fifth key is this. You must believe what the deed says, even when your five senses argue otherwise. This was Kenyon's famous distinction between what he called sense knowledge and revelation knowledge. Sense knowledge is everything your eyes, your ears, your bank balance, your body, and your bills report to you in the moment. Revelation knowledge is what the Word declares to be true, regardless of what those senses report. And Kenyon taught that the whole battle of faith is fought in that gap, because your senses are not lying to you exactly, they're just only reporting on the visible, the same way a bank statement app on your phone might glitch and show zero even though the actual account is full. If you trust the glitch over the actual ledger, you'll live poor even while you're rich. Think about someone who has real money sitting untouched, but keeps checking a broken app that keeps showing an empty balance. They stop spending, stop planning, stop living like they have resources, purely because of a faulty report, not because the money left. Kenyon said, this is exactly what happens when a believer lets sickness, lack, fear, or circumstance override what the Word has already settled. The senses report empty, and the person agrees with the report instead of the deed. This doesn't mean ignoring reality. Kenyon was practical. He wasn't asking people to deny a fever or deny an empty wallet. He was asking them to refuse to let those temporary reports become the final verdict, to hold the Word as the higher court. The way you'd trust the bank's actual ledger over a broken phone screen, if the screen says zero and the ledger says full, you don't redecorate your house to look poor. You go fix the screen or call the bank directly. Faith, in Kenyon's teaching, is choosing to stand on the ledger while the glitch sorts itself out. It's uncomfortable sometimes. It takes patience, but it's the only way anyone has ever moved from sense-knowledge poverty into vital possession of what was legally theirs the whole time. So ask yourself today what report you've been agreeing with. Is it the doctor's worst prediction? Is it the collection notice? Is it the years of disappointment telling you nothing ever changes for people like you? Kenyon would gently but firmly say, that's sense knowledge. It feels true because it's loud and immediate, but it isn't final. The Word is final, and the sooner you let the Word outrank the glitch, the sooner the vital experience starts lining up with the legal reality. So speak this decree with me. I trust the Word above the report of my senses. Again, I trust the Word above the report of my senses. The sixth key is this. You have to actually go to the counter, because Kenyon never taught a passive faith. He taught that faith without corresponding action is exactly what James warned it would be. Dead, lifeless, a legal claim that never turns into a lived reality. This is where so many sincere people get stuck. They've learned the legal standing, they've even started confessing better words. They've started noticing the gap between sense knowledge and revelation knowledge, but they never take the final step of acting like the account is real. And Kenyon said that step, small as it looks, is what separates a theory from a testimony. Think of the person who knows the inheritance check exists, knows the paperwork is signed, has even practiced saying it out loud with confidence, but never actually drives to the bank, never walks in, never presents themselves at the counter. All the belief in the world doesn't cash a check that stays in a drawer. Kenyon taught that real faith always has a corresponding action, some small physical step that says with your body what your mouth has been saying with your words. If you've been confessing provision, that might look like planning as though it's coming, not recklessly, but with quiet expectancy. If you've been confessing healing, that might look like resuming a normal rhythm of life instead of organizing your whole identity around the sickness. If you've been confessing peace, that might look like actually laying the worry down at night instead of rehearsing it one more time under the covers. None of these actions earn the blessing. Remember, the account was already funded back at the first key. These actions simply walk you up to the counter to receive what was legally yours all along. Kenyon used to point out that the man at the pool of Bethesda was told to rise and take up his bed, not after he was healed as proof, but as the very act that carried him into the healing. The action and the faith moved together, not one waiting politely for the other. This is the piece most teaching skips. Everyone loves talking about the funded account. Fewer people talk about the courage it takes to actually walk up and present yourself, to stop waiting to feel ready, and instead act like the paperwork is already signed, because it is. So today, whatever legal reality you've been confessing, ask yourself what one action would look like if you actually believed the check was in your hand, and then take that one action, not recklessly, not foolishly, but as a quiet declaration that you're done circling the bank and ready to walk through the doors. So speak this decree with me. I take the corresponding action, and I walk up to receive what is mine. Again, I take the corresponding action, and I walk up to receive what is mine. Here is the whole picture. The account was opened before you knew it existed. Legal ownership and vital possession are two different things, and you're called to close that gap. Your words are the withdrawal slip that puts the claim into motion. Your identification with Christ makes the account joint rather than borrowed. The word must outrank the report of your senses. And finally, faith always walks itself to the counter through some small corresponding action. Put those six together, and you have exactly what Kenyon spent his life trying to hand back to ordinary, tired, sincere people who had no idea how rich they already were. So say it with me one final time. I know what belongs to me. I speak what belongs to me. I take what belongs to me. I am claiming my account now. And again, I am claiming my account now. The money was never the question. The account was never in doubt. The only thing left, the only thing that was ever left, was you walking up and claiming it.